Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first ever official Cork City FC podcast, City Talk, where we'll be looking to bring you one episode a week, hopefully every Wednesday, where we're going to chat with. Today, we're chatting with Neale, players, ex-players, people involved in the club, and we're looking to get everyone involved from near and far. So, all the fans, please get in touch through our social media channels, info@Cork City FC. We want to hear your thoughts, views on what you'd like to hear, people that you'd like to have on, questions that you'd like to have asked. So without further ado, I'd like to get into it. My name is Paul DC. I'm the commercial and marketing manager for the club. So I'll be hosting the podcast and really looking forward to it. So firstly, I'll introduce Neale. Welcome, Neale. How are things?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I haven't grown a beard as much as you, man. I think that's what everyone's going to be saying. That's the first question everyone's going to say. When are you going to shave that beard off?
I know.
I haven't seen you in a few weeks, mate. That is massive.
I know. I'm making the most of quarantine at the moment, so I'm okay. But
no, I'm all right. I'm all right up here. Obviously, it's strange times. Just struggling to fill our time with stuff, but doing my best. The house is getting a good lick of paint anyway.
Yeah, obviously, look, we don't want to kind of dwell on the corona stuff too much, as it's, everyone I think has it up to here with the coronavirus at the moment. But obviously, it's a bit different for everyone, and it's a struggle for everyone. But how are you coping with it? How's the family? What have you been up to?
Yeah, just trying, like I said, just trying to fill the time with little bits and pieces. For the first part of it, I was heavy into my pro license, so there was a lot of stuff that I needed to finish off for that. So the first couple of weeks flew by doing that. Since then, I've been looking for stuff to do, going on little bits of exercise, taking the kids out. Obviously, can't go too far, so been a little bit restricted there. But it's been okay. Obviously, missing football massively and being out on the pitch and seeing the lads and everything else, but we're doing okay.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, getting the elephant out of the room first and foremost, I suppose, while we're sitting here on Wednesday morning, on the 13th of May, there's been no kind of decision made either way, really, about when the league might be back, could be back. I know there's been a lot of murmurings in the media and coming from the FAI on different decisions in the government, but I suppose there's been no definite decision really at the moment of when you might be back and even when you might be able to kind of get back training and so on and so forth, but which I know can be tough. But how are you finding all that, and where's the kind of preparation within the team at?
Yeah, I mean, when we first left, it was going to be for a couple of weeks when our third game against Bowes was called off. But I suppose we're just using a little bit of, like you say, a little bit of common sense with everybody else. Really, we're just going by the guidelines. We gave the program. Joe did a brilliant program for the boys, an intense program. Obviously, we've had to tweak that now because we were due to be back on June the 19th. That's obviously now not going to happen. So we gave them a program that's going to have to be tweaked, but a little bit of common sense has to be used. We're obviously not going to rush around and try and get back without the right guidelines. And as long as the government are giving us advice and giving us guidelines, we have to stick by them. So as it stands at the moment, we're planning for hopefully the earliest September, but we just don't know. So the players, I'm sure they want to get back as quick as they can. They just want to play football, but we need to make sure that everything's safe and everyone's all right.
Yeah, and I suppose just to give people a bit of a background into that, how exactly does that work with the players, and how are you monitoring them? What are they doing? Exercises, how much are they doing, so on and so forth? Because I suppose, look, exactly like you said, it could possibly be September when the season starts, hopefully sooner. But if that's the kind of timeline, it's 3-4 months away. What kind of what would the players need to be doing now? I suppose they can't be doing too much with the win goal very soon. But
yeah, it's difficult. I mean, Joe's given them a program, so they have to put in there. There's not really a way we can test them actually live. The GPS units we've got the GPS needs to be within the unit, be close to the unit, each individual unit. Obviously, we can't have that because they're training individually. So they're putting in their scores, they're putting in their results that they're getting onto an online platform, sending them into Joe. Joe's telling them, listen, that's good. Or now, obviously, it's the trust of the players there. I know probably if it was me as a player, on the scores, I'd be one of the fittest, and then when it actually came to reality. But no, I think we've got a good bunch of players. We've got a good bunch of lads that are honest. They want to improve, and there's no point then putting in silly scores, and then when they come back, we start training again. They're nowhere near those scores, so they have to be as honest as they can. We have to believe them, which we do. So that's how we've been working it, really. But like I said, that was to come back at June. But when the new restrictions came out, it's quite obvious we're not going to be back. So we've had to give a little bit of leeway, really, and just say, listen, cut back on what you're doing. Only maybe do one of the intense runs a week. It's tough because as footballers, you're always aiming for a date. You're always training towards a certain date. We don't know what we're training for at the moment. So they'll just need to keep ticking over without doing anything mad, to make sure that when we do come back, if we do come back in August for pre-season, that they're going to be fit and raring to go.
Yeah, and look, I suppose that's probably one of the positives of having a young kind of energetic squad. That that hopefully, look, that won't be a bit of an issue for those lads. They're all young, fit lads. They're always kind of maintaining themselves anyway. That's the kind of way of the modern footballer, really. Like, isn't it? It's not maybe like before where fellas would leave themselves go and struggle to get back. Then let's say when it's time to get going in pre-season, which obviously would be the norm. But
yeah, I mean, even the older players we've got are still brilliant fitness levels. Alan Bennett, Mark Minotti, Chops. So they're all Grove Morrissey. So they're all like they're all fit boys. It's like you say, it's the modern footballer now. They want to train. They want to be out there running. They want to be ticking over and doing a little bit. So it's just match fitness. Like you say, you can jog around, you can do runs and everything else, but there's nothing beats actually playing matches and the fitness levels required for that.
Good stuff. Look, I suppose just to bring through today's episode, what we're going to be looking at is kind of, I suppose, since you joined the club right up to now and everything in between, then we might move on to a bit of when you played with the club previously from was it 2004 to 2006, and then we have some fans' questions that have come in through email and social media, so going to go try and get through a few of them. So yeah, let's get cracking. I suppose, look, you joined the club last year, coming towards the tail end of the season. I suppose, look, maybe tell us about how that came about, how you found it, how last season was, pre-season, coming into this season. Just kind of gives a run through of everything since, I suppose, you've come back to the club.
Yeah, so obviously at the time I was manager of Longford, and we were in the first division. We were doing okay, doing quite well, and the word got around, I think, out and about, that I was going to get offered the job. Obviously, I didn't hear anything until I got offered it, and then decided that it was too good an opportunity for me to turn down. It was a club that I held close to my heart, and it was I believe the biggest club in the country with the biggest and the best fan base. So it was, as much as it was a tough decision to leave Longford where we were in the league, it wasn't a massively tough decision in terms of the club I was going to being Cork City. So that was a tough decision, but a decision that I felt I needed to take. Obviously, the first few matches were very difficult. I felt that obviously the squad were down and low on confidence. There was a few injuries that every club has, but certainly we had a good few injuries at the time. So it was tough. It was tough coming into the club, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed just being out there every day with the lads, training in the daytime, and then the matches at Turner's Cross with good support, and the welcome I got from my first game against Sligo was unbelievable. And unfortunately we couldn't get a result that night, but I think the fans could see what we were trying to do that night. It was an entertaining game. And then
just stopping you there, Neale. I suppose on the move from, I suppose, Longford, where you'd been for a couple of years, what are the things that kind of stood out to you coming to, I suppose, look, maybe known as a bigger club like Cork City? I suppose, what were the differences? Obviously, knowing that it would have been part-time in Longford, so that's an obvious difference, and training maybe in the evening, so on and so forth. But was there couple of things, or one thing in particular that really stood out to you that kind of took you back, saying, yeah, like this is another level, like,
Yeah, just the size of the club, I think, and the interest in it, and the amount of people that would stop you in the street when you're walking along and concerned about the result of the game on the Friday. I mean, with no disrespect to Longford, and it is in the first division. They are in the first division, which is it's got some good players in it. It's a decent league, but the Premier Division is where everyone wants to be. So the fact that the spotlight is more on you in the Premier Division, there's more criticism from you. There's more praise for you. So certainly the spotlight was more on my team with Cork City than it was with Longford. So that was the major thing, just the amount of the eyes, the scrutiny on the actual team, I suppose.
Very good. And just moving on then, I suppose, from within the team, obviously the results didn't go to plan for the first couple of results, and things obviously picked up a bit from there. Then, I suppose, what were the difficulties in that? Did you I know you mentioned that players were a bit low and there was a couple of injuries, but I suppose there was a lot of reasons probably contributed to things not kind of going as smoothly as you would have liked at the very beginning.
Yeah, it was difficult. We were trying to implement a new style of play, new ideas. But also, I felt that we needed to go and just be a bit more attacking. I wanted my team to attack, and I think the criticism of the team before would have been that lack of forward play, which I felt was important. I needed to address. So we went for it for a few games, and like I say, the first game Sligo it was 4-2, but it was very close up until the last goal. So I felt that's something I needed to do, and I felt the players responded well to it. We had some good results towards the end, like you say.
And you spoke there about the scrutiny, I suppose, on the results, and that is really probably a focal point for the manager. But how does that compare to when you were here as a player? I suppose sometimes the kind of outside stuff can go a little bit over your head when you're a player, but I suppose as the manager, you're the focal point and everything goes through you. Is that something that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I think as a player, you can, if you lose a match or you kind of you can blame someone else as long as you've done all right. You'll have people telling you that, listen, you played all right, don't worry about it. But when you've lost, everyone, you seem to take it personally as a manager. You seem to take responsibility. You have to take responsibility for it. It's your team that you've put out there, so you take responsibility for it, and you scrutinise every part of it. And you're bound to make mistakes. No manager's ever gone through a game without making any mistakes. So you go for every mistake you've made. What if I would have done this? What if I would have done that? And then you try and analyse it, and you try and move on and address that and change it for the next match. So certainly you take it a lot more personally as a manager, and people will let you know. More people will let you know rather than everyone say, "Oh, you did all right, you did all right." The results there to see you lost the game. So you have to take responsibility for it, and you have to be big enough to accept that and move on.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, moving towards the end of the season, then it picked up and was very positive. The win against UCD, the win against Dundalk in the very last game at Turner's Cross last season. The atmosphere for both games was electric, and I suppose it probably gave yourself a real hunger and kind of gave the fans a lift and gave everyone a kind of a bit of a optimism kind of moving into the next season. So you hear a lot of managers speaking that the off season is probably the toughest part of the year. How did you find that? I suppose from November on, what would you been doing during those times? How did you find it? Obviously there was a huge turnover in players coming into this season, so obviously a lot of work had to go into it during the off season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't think we got the credit we deserve for the win against Dundalk. I thought that we beat Dundalk in it, and everyone just brushed over it as they've won the league anyway. It doesn't really matter. But for us, I thought it was a very good performance. The team
that had the cup final the next week as well.
Yeah, and I just felt that we played well. We didn't get the credit. Everyone just dismissed it as, and it was a good result to beat Dundalk at home. Obviously they were champions and going in the cup as well. But I just felt that we didn't get the credit anyway. But no, we moved on. So that obviously with only 3 players still under contract, the important thing was trying to work out who we were going to keep, who we'd be able to keep, who we would have to release. So it was tough, you haven't got a huge pot of players to choose from. So we were trying to rebuild a whole squad from scratch, more or less.
And just to kind of give fans an insight to what would a day-to-day in the off-season be like for yourself as a manager? Are you kind of going, obviously, look, the English leagues are still in play. Are you going watching games? Are you on the phone? Are you in the office? How is that working in the off-season?
A bit of all of them, really, a bit of all of them. So for me last year, it was trying to work out who was going to be out, who was under contract. Okay, fine. Can we afford to keep, or do we want to keep the players that are under contract? can we work out that we can let some of those go to get other players in? Do they want to stay? That was first of all. Then it was what positions are needed, where do we need to fill? So then it was, right, we need to go and sign these players. And you might have your first option down to your seventh or eighth option. And if your first option is a no, then you move on to your next one, then you move on to your next one. Then your first option might come back to you and say, yeah, okay, I will sign for you. Then you've got to go back to your fourth option and say, okay, that's not. So it's very difficult. It's obviously I had it with Longford, because Longford's the same. Everyone's out of contract at the end of the season in the first division, more or less. So you have it every year. What I had at Longford before, though, was that when I first year I built a squad, the second year more or less everyone wanted to stay, so that was an easy part. You're only adding 3 or 4 new players. For this one, it was a total rebuild. So, like I say, you're going through matches, you're watching clips of people, you're getting a constant barrage of WhatsApps and emails from agents offering you the next Lionel Messi. So it's tough. It's time consuming. It's a lot of work trying to whittle it down, trying to negotiate with players, agree terms with players. It's tough. So it's a lot of hard work. I know you used to come into my office, and see me sitting down and say, "What are you doing? You're not doing anything." But you must have caught me in a break.
You're on a tea break every time I came in. No, but I suppose, look, again, obviously seeing you're working on it on a day-to-day basis, and I suppose one of the difficulties, not just that you face, but I think within the league as well, is that, there's maybe a couple of clubs at the moment offer the full 52-week contracts. It's a lot of it's kind of start the pre-season, maybe start the season to the end of the season. So what kind of seemed to be happening from my own viewpoint is that players were kind of holding out until the last minute and kind of weighing up their options, seeing what's out there and so on and so forth, and then they'll make their decision. So there was kind of nothing really being signed, sealed and delivered, very few before Christmas really. People were kind of coming in and scouring their options early January when pre-season was going to start, or even during pre-season. Would that be right?
Yeah, more or less. I think if you've got a player who's released in October, his contract's up in October, if he thinks that he's not going to start getting paid, not that it's all about money, because it's not, but if he thinks he's not going to start getting paid until January, he's going to say, what's the rush, me signing in October? So if you're offering contracts to start there, and then probably they'd sign straight away to get paid until January. But to be honest, that doesn't really happen at a lot of clubs. So like you say, it's a case of, okay, well, you're offering me that, all right, I'll get back to you, kind of thing. And some do, some don't. Some you're constantly chasing because it's a player you really want to sign, and some they might be your fourth option, but you've still got to keep them in the loop because you might need to come back to them at some stage. So it's a bit of a balancing act, it's a juggling act, and it is tough, but it's quite enjoyable as well. I quite enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, and I suppose then you were coming into January. I think you were back on January 2nd, was it? Again, not at full tilt, I suppose, squad-wise, but kind of getting there, and more you kind of progressed into January, getting players in and assembling the squad, I suppose, that you were happy with, and how did pre-season go? Were you happy with it? Were you happy with the squad you assembled? And were there anything that you might have done differently, or because obviously it was your first proper pre-season as a full-time manager, training in the mornings? How did you find that? And I know Joe Gamble as well was in doing great work with you and training from, as I said again, from my point of view, where I was standing, it seemed to go well. Players are training well, so on.
We've got a good little staff with myself, Joe. Mark Minolti's really embraced the coaching side of it as well as the playing, and Alan Bennett's helped out when he's not been doing his teaching. So we have a good little tight unit there. And I think what was important to us at the start was we give the young players a chance to have a good time of assessing them. So I think we signed, was it 6 under 19s players this year, plus 3 or 4 that were already there from last year. So it was good for us. It really gave us a great chance to have a look at pre-season, to see what they're all about, get a good look at them. Would they be ready to step into the first team right now? That gave us a good chance to have a look. obviously we're still looking for players. I think we only started pre-season with maybe 14 players, a couple of injuries on top of that. So we needed to get players in just to have a look, a few trialists, a few players that we wanted to sign, and then we started playing pre-season games, which I found that quite difficult. Trying to get pre-season matches is tough. You know, it's the pitches obviously around January time they're soft, and it's just difficult trying to get decent friendlies in. But we did our best. We got a few in. And then as it went on, we knew that it was going to be late. We knew the loans were going to be late because clubs in England are not going to loan you a player to play pre-season matches. So that was going to be. We knew that if we were going to use the loan system for players, they were going to come in quite late. Not ideal, but it's the way it is. So we knew if we were going to keep players, obviously we'd have to keep 4 spaces free for loan players, which was going to be late, which it was. And then pre-season came, and by the time that it ended, I think we had I thought we would have had a competitive squad, albeit young, but we were quite happy with what we had going into the season.
Yeah, and you could really, I suppose, sense the atmosphere around the club and the players on a day-to-day basis that, there was a kind of, and look, I know we put a lot of work within the club in the off-season, a kind of, with the slogan "The City Rising," and I suppose the message behind that wasn't just next year we're going to win the league. It was more, look, it's obviously been a low year, and the emphasis on next year is just kind of building back up and getting back on our feet and kind of progressing and moving forward, and I think the fans really kind of took to that, really supported it. The season ticket sales were very, very good. They actually kind of took us by surprise, if anything else, and we were thrilled with the support, because obviously coming back off the back of a very, unusual season, we'll say, and not a great season. I suppose you don't know what way the fans are going to react. Are they going to throw in the towel? But that certainly wasn't the case, and they supported the club, and they could see, with the young players, progressive players, exciting players, I think they could see and sense that the club and the players and the management were trying to do the right thing and trying to do the right thing and go in the right direction. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I felt that people, like you say, the whole City Rising thing describes something that's building up from the bottom. That's the way I looked at it, and that's certainly the case. That was certainly my brief when I took the job. Was we're going to be starting from the bottom, not the bottom of the league, but starting from a base where we have got only 3 players signed up for this season. We need to start building a new squad, bring some new players in. So that's what we did. We were building a new squad, and it takes time. It was never going to be. You're never going to get. I think in the first game against Shells, we had 8 debuts for the club, and I'm not sure, but I would say a lot of those were senior debuts as well. The actual players' first senior game. So it was going to take time. I don't think that. And to credit to the fans, I don't think that they were expecting us to be at full tilt in the first few games. I felt that they saw what we were doing. They saw that it was going to take time. There was no rush. I didn't feel any pressure from any fans that you have to win this, you have to win that. I felt that they saw what we were doing and they got really behind us against Shells. As you know, it was a late winner they scored, which was disappointing. So it was, but even coming off the pitch after, I just felt that they saw what we were trying to do, and they give us credit for that.
Yeah, it was obviously a very disappointing result because I suppose, and something that I mentioned at the time, when you're kind of engrossed in it and you're involved in it, it kind of, you see the work that's after going on in the whole of pre-season and stuff like that, it probably hits a bit harder, But look, again, unfortunate, but I think, like you said, people could see, that there was positives there. They were trying to do the right thing, and they could see, I suppose, players giving 100%, trying to play the right way wasn't always happening, but there was positive signs there. Just going back to the youth players, I suppose, and it's probably been the talking point over the last couple of years, maybe, and obviously with the situation with Shamrock Rovers entering the B team into the first division. How do you find that with players coming from the under-19s? It is and obviously, look, just kind of, I can only speak from my own experience as a younger player at the club. Like when you're 18, it's a huge step up to the first team. And it's something that I think people don't realise how big of a step up it is. It's obviously very difficult, and when you've you did the norm would be maybe to have 2 or 3 players trickling into the first team, but like you said, I think there was 7 or 8 players from the under-19s, basically 18-year-olds, signing for the first team and even being prominent figures. It's a difficult one for yourself, and I suppose obviously it's a difficult one for the players themselves because the under-21 gap that was there before the under-20s, it really did give you another year to kind of progress, I suppose, physically, mentally, and bring you up another level before you did enter the first team. Is that something you think is lacking at the moment, or do you think the setup at the moment is sufficed, or what?
No, I think there's obviously there is a void there. That's why Rovers have started a B team in the first division, and I mean, no, not trying to be dismissive or disrespectful to Dundalk, but how many players do they bring through from their youth team? Because they're successful, because they're winning because they're winning titles, it's difficult to bring young players through. The gap between the under-19s and the top of the Premier Division is huge. Yeah. Ideally, you'd have a player. He'd be coming into your squad. He'd be training for a couple of years, making the odd substitution off the bench or odd appearance off the bench. An odd league cup start here and there, and then you integrate them that way. To have to throw them in straight away is not fair on them, and it's not fair on the player really. But there is a big gap. So someone could be scoring loads of goals for the under-19s against Cabinteely's under-19s. That doesn't mean they're going to score a lot of goals against Dundalk or Shamrock Rovers. But obviously you don't know until you try. But for me, it's like I said, for us, we gave them a good pre-season. We gave the lads a good pre-season to see where they were at physically. Like you say, it takes a lot out of them physically as well, the pre-season. A lot of them, it's their first full pre-season they've ever done. So a few of them were struggling with a pre-season. So, to put that much pressure on them and to expect them to be able just to play every week in, week out in the Premier Division for Cork City is a lot to ask of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, especially if you're a club or a team that's kind of trying to force your way into the top part of the Premier Division, it's very difficult. But I suppose this year they have introduced that you can implement a number of the under-19 players a number of under-23 players into the under-19s, which will be a help. But I think that there's certainly more maybe that can be done on that part to help the development, because look, some players are ready for first team football when they're 16, 17, 18, but I suppose some players are late developers really, and they do take a bit more time, but they're worth it in the end, as they say. So there's a kind of a bit of a balancing act. Every player is not the same,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just because physically wise, they have to be ready, but mentally too. Can they deal with the pressure of expectation? So you're playing for the under-19s. There's a few people watching at Bishopstown. There's no pressure on you. As soon as you step over the line at Turner's Cross with fans watching, the expectations on you now. They don't support the fans or the media don't care if you're an 18-year-old, you're the centre forward for Cork City that day. You have to do a job up there. So can they handle the pressure of that? Some can, some can't. Some it takes a little bit longer than others. Some get it with experience, but to gain the experience of doing it, you have to have, it's tough as well, because we're all about results business as well. We haven't got time to give lads 4 or 5 games to let them bed in. We're about results, and we need to get results.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose just moving forward then into the start of the league season, this season, I suppose it was a baptism of fire is kind of probably the right way to put it. Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk away 2 games in the space of not even 3 days. It's Shells at home. Obviously, the result went against, but then picked up the positive result against Finn Harps, and things seem to be going in the right direction again. Probably unlucky against St. Pat's. Talk us through the start of the season, what your thoughts were, and how you were feeling on that.
Yeah, so after the Shells game, I felt that we'd done okay, but probably creating chances was an issue. So we went to Shamrock Rovers, and from our previous experience of playing there, I played there with Longford in the cup, and we'd beaten them. So we played Dundalk last year away, and we'd more or less parked the bus, and I felt, and we lost anyway, so I felt that we'd go to Shamrock Rovers and we'd give it a bit of a go, and we did for the first half an hour. I thought we were very good. Then I felt that we showed our naivety a little bit with this is not a criticism of the boys, because it's what we asked them, but with judging by the weather and the conditions of the pitch and the result, the wind, that once you do concede your first goal, then you just need to tighten up a little bit and go into half time. In the second half, you'll have the wind, you'll have the wind behind your backs, you're creating chances. Then we concede a second goal and get a player sent off. And then it is really back to the wall. And then it's just sit tight and try and defend. And we didn't. We kind of still trying to do things that you would do when you're 1-0 up or it's 0-0. So a little bit of naivety. So we spoke about it after the game and had a good discussion about it with the players about managing the match. If you're 2-0 down or 3-0 down away to Shamrock Rovers with half an hour left, realistically, and down to 10 men, realistically, are you going to score 4 goals to get back into the game, or are you better off just playing it tight? If you lose 3-0, it's a bad result, don't get me wrong, but it's not a catastrophe. When you lose 6, it's a catastrophe, and the alarm bells are ringing then.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it wasn't really like that. It was just a bit of naivety. We were okay for that until we had a player sent off, and so we learned from that. So we then we go to Dundalk, and then it was a difficult one. Do we go to Dundalk and try and play the same we did against? Obviously, we're missing a few players as well through suspension and injury. The game was 3 days after the Shamrock Rovers one. So do we go there and park the bus and try and nick a result and stay solid and try and hit them on the counter, or do we go there and try and outplay them? And I felt with the players we had available that we were better off just trying to sit tight, play on the counter. Unfortunately, we lost that game as well, but I felt that as a game following on from the Shamrock Rovers game, it was an improvement. You could see the boys that were getting the game management into their match, into their play a little bit, into their minds. When we went 1-0, we still stayed. We were down 1-0 down, still to stay tight. And then I think it was a cracker of a goal? It was a penalty and then a cracker of a goal done us towards the end to put a gloss on a result that if it was 1-0, it would have been a different sort of story on it. It would have been a tight game, but the fact we lost 3-0 after the 6-0, it looked bad. But I felt that myself and Joe and Benno and Knowles, we spoke about it, and we were going in the right direction. It was a step forward on where we'd been. And then we played Finn Harps, beat Finn Harps, but probably were too open to let them have too many chances. But scored one, probably should have scored another one. I don't think the goal was offside. It was ruled out.
Great atmosphere actually that night in the cross.
Unbelievable atmosphere. I mean, as soon as, even going in at half time, the atmosphere was unbelievable. And then when the goal went in and the win after, the relief, and you just felt, that's when I just felt everyone was behind us and everyone was seeing what we're doing. It was a pressure game, that one, because I'd said in the press before that not that we're going to disregard.
Win games really, though, so they're not like, you win, you're expected to win.
We have to win. I said we needed to win against teams that were going to be around us, and I felt that Finn Harps would be around us, and with all due respect, probably Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk probably not going to be around us. So then we get that win, and the fans were unbelievable, and the atmosphere was different class. And then we go to Pats, where again tough place to go. And I felt it was they probably shaded it, but they would do for the home team. But I felt it was a pretty even game. They scored a good goal. We missed a couple of chances. But it wasn't, don't get me wrong, no one likes to lose. But it was, I could see things that I felt we were going in the right direction.
A draw probably, I was at the game that night myself, a draw probably was a fair result, really. I don't think either team did a whole lot to merit getting the win, really. Like it was just the one, I suppose.
But we're the away team. I felt we're the away team. We've had 2 bad away results before. Do we go up there and try and blast them out of it, or do we play quite compact and try and hit them? And we did, and we conceded a goal, but we should have scored 1 or 2 others ourselves. And again, I just felt it was I could just see us getting better. I could see some of the players were getting what we were saying about. Just naivety. They weren't as naive against St Pat's as they were against Rovers and to a lesser extent Dundalk. But so I just felt that we were improving all the time. And like I said at the start, it was never going to be, with so many new players, with so many young players, it was never going to be perfect from the start. But I just felt we were getting there.
Yeah, and I suppose the game, that we were due to have before everything closed down was the Bohemians game, and I know the atmosphere kind of going into that really was kind of and I know that Bohemians were kind of going well, and they've been doing well the last couple of seasons and had a decent enough start. But I know at home we would have kind of said, look, this is the opportunity to really kind of get another positive result and kick on from there. Would that be right?
Yeah, I felt that any home game we look to try and win anyway, but Bows have been going well. They're a good young squad like ourselves, and I just felt that we would have enough about us to take the game to them the way they play, and I felt that I was confident going into it. I was confident that I'd seen enough over the past few games. I felt that we'd learned from our mistakes, and I was confident enough that if we played well, if we put our plan into place, then we could give them a good game and get a result. So, but we'll never know. We'll never know.
I know. I suppose that brings us up to now, really, and I guess we touched on it at the start of where you're kind of at, where the players are at the moment. But there's a lot of kind of unknowns, really, I suppose, at this time. I know the lads, the loan players, and you know, has there been any work done around that? Have you been in contact with those clubs? You know, how, you know, where do you even go with players? You know, will you shed players? Will you bring new players in? Is it possible? How is all that going to work? Like, you know,
we'll start with the loan players. So the loan players are out of contract in June. So that is, you know, there's nothing we can do about that. That's just when their contracts are up. We've got a good relationship with all the clubs, Arsenal, Wimbledon, QPR and Birmingham. And we've said that we'd like to extend them beyond the expiry date, depending on when we're back. Obviously, from a club's point of view, financially wise, it doesn't make sense for us to pay them while we're not in. So I think what they're going to do is just the contracts will run out, and then when it comes to the new season starting, whenever that is, we'll renew them then. Hopefully, obviously, as we're standing here in May, that's what we'd like. Depending on when we're back, you know, different clubs might come in for those players. They might get injured or whatever. So I don't know. So as it stands at the moment, yes, we'd like to bring them back. But, you know, their contracts do expire in June. In terms of getting, you know, we haven't got the biggest squad in the world to be getting rid of players. We'd like to bring a few players in. I think that myself and Joe, we would have identified what we're lacking in the 5 games we did play, where we need to strengthen. But again, you know, that's easier said than done. We know what we'd like. Whether we're able to do that is a different matter. But again, depending on, obviously, there's the transfer window to think about. So the transfer window is in July, but with no football happening, I'm not sure if the club will, or sorry, not the club, that if FIFA or UEFA will move the transfer window to a different date. Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Obviously, we're not the only country and not the only club involved in that. There's far bigger stuff going on in the world than that. So I think that depending on when the transfer window is, but yeah, we would like to do a little bit of add a couple more rather than lose any, to be honest.
Good stuff. And look, thanks for that, Neale. That kind of, you know, there's a bit of everything in there in between from when you've come to the club at the beginning to right now. Obviously, it's a very difficult situation, and I suppose we'll see what the future holds in regards to anything else. Moving on to your previous time at the club, I suppose. Was it you joined the club in 2004 from Waterford? Maybe, look, for some of the younger fans maybe who mightn't have known too much about your own career previous to that, you might shed some light on that. You obviously, you're a Spurs boy, started off with Spurs and played in their first team. I know I was showing my own kids the other day. I think a picture popped up with you. With the one with Beckham, was it? Is that your debut?
Yeah, that's on
like, did he play in the Premier League? Because the Premier League seems like, you know, another planet really from, you know, like, you know, so it was it's, you know, it's a obviously proud thing for yourself. You know, do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, so I would have like everybody else played local football in there. I was born just down the road from Tottenham, so there's my local club. I used to go there every home game, and I signed for them at 12, training once a week with them, and then it progresses to twice a week. Then you start playing matches for them. So at whatever 15, you start playing for the schoolboys. Then you sign, at the time was a YTS, which is a scholarship now. So you do a couple of years of that. Then you sign your pro contracts, which I did a couple of 1 years. And then I got in the first team. I was in and around the first team squad, which was obviously for someone, a big fan of Spurs at the time.
Who was the manager? Who was the manager at the time?
So Jerry Francis gave me my debut, but I would have worked with, like, Chris Hughton was my youth team manager, or my reserve team manager, sorry. Then we had Christian Gross, then we had George Graham, Glenn Hoddle. So it was a lot of managers in a short space of time, really, at the time. And I always felt that maybe this manager don't rate me, maybe the next manager will. So I'd signed a 5-year contract at one point and just kind of sat there out, really waiting for the next manager to come along. that didn't happen, so I ended up leaving and joining Peterborough, where I was there
Maybe
for
just
2
before
years.
you move on to Peterborough, do you want to give us a taste of some of the players that you would have played with at Tottenham at the time? You know, there was obviously some very high-profile players at the time. You know, Premier League legends, really.
I suppose Teddy Sheringham, Jurgen Klinsmann, Les Ferdinand.
How was it rubbing shoulders and playing with them on it? You know, how many levels were they up? Like, you know,
it's brilliant.
I suppose on football,
it's unbelievable. But at the time, when you're a youth team player, when you're like a young player at a club, you think you've got a right to be there as well. So you're not too much in awe of them. Don't get me wrong. You're not like you're not sitting there every day and training in awe of them, because you felt you've earned the right to be there as well. But like some, you know, obviously looking at what they've gone on to achieve and what they were achieving at the time was just, you know, unbelievable. Teddy Sheringham, and just having a good relationship with them just treating you just as a fellow player as well, rather than a young kid, a young boy. Even though they would give you advice, and whether you took it or not was a different thing. But I just felt that, you know, learning from them was invaluable. But you also have to be your own man as well, and you can't be in awe of them. At the end of the day, if you want to be a professional footballer for Tottenham, they're your competition as well. So you can't treat them like you've got too much in awe of them. But no, they were certainly. My favourite player to watch was David Ginola. Anyway, he was at the time was unbelievable for Tottenham, unstoppable, and such a nice fella as well.
And you Peterborough next, was it?
Peterborough next.
You met Dan Murray, actually, I think.
Dan Murray, Muzzle was there. Muzzle was there as a young kid. Dan Connor was there, the goalkeeper. Killian Brennan was there at the time, the younger player. Tony Shields, who had played in the League of Ireland as well. So there was a few Irish lads there, but I was probably older than them, so they were more in the youth team and that. But yeah, they were. I think I would have seen Muzza on the first maybe few months I got there, and he'd come over to Cork, which I didn't know at the time. He'd come over to Cork pretty soon after I joined.
Did he complain as much then as he still does now, or how was he back then?
No, he's always moaning about something, isn't he? But no, he's gone on to to be a legend, so can't knock him too much.
Top man. So yeah, and how did you make your way off? Was it Waterford you signed with then? How did that even come about? And
I said, Dan Connor was the goalkeeper coach. Well, not the goalkeeper coach. Goalkeeper at was at Peterborough at the time, and had come back to Ireland again in 2003 or whatever it was. So he phoned me up and said, I'd been released by Peterborough, I got a mutual agreement and left. And then he said to me, do you want to come over here? I think it was around July, August time. Must have been end of July in the transfer window. Said, do you want to come over here and play over here? So nothing was really happening in England. I'd been on a couple of trials, didn't really like it. So I came over and really enjoyed my time at Watford. And while I was there, Pat Dolan come and see me in Watford a couple of times, and I'd known Pat from years ago when we played in Malaysia in the World Cup, that he'd come over to Malaysia to try and sign a couple of players there. So that's the lengths he used to go to try and sign players. So I know Watford's not Malaysia, but I really appreciate that he'd come over to me and was making an effort to try and sign me. And Watford at the time, the manager had gone, and I'm not sure who was going to be manager. So yeah, that was it. I signed for. And
what was your thought process at the time to Waterford? Obviously, was it just kind of different scenery, change things up? Is there a bit of that to it?
Yeah, to be honest, I'd gone 2 years at Tottenham without playing a single match, not even a reserve match towards the end of it. And I'd gone to Peterborough, and I just found consistency hard. I'd play a good game, and then I wouldn't have a good game, and it was just I was in and out. It was frustrating for me. I needed a run of games, which I did get a couple of times at Peterborough. Then you get injured, you'd be out of it, and there was a lot of competition for places, and so my head was a little bit wrecked from football, to be honest. And then Dan Connor said, "Come over here," and I just felt it was like a fresh start. I thought, why not give it a go? It's summer football, which I wasn't used to. Obviously, in a new country, but I knew a few lads who were playing in it. Like I said, a few of the boys had been at Peterborough, but I also knew lads I'd played for Ireland at certain stages. So I also knew a lot of lads who were playing for Ireland, who played for Ireland, were back in the league playing. So I knew it must be a good standard if those boys are playing here. So it wasn't too much a step into the unknown, because I did know a few of the players over here, and obviously from the Irish setup, people knew me, and I knew a few people around the league. So it was a tough decision in terms of stepping away from England But I'd become disillusioned for it. I just needed a fresh start. And I'd always wanted to play abroad as well. So I'm counting that as being playing abroad.
Yeah, and I suppose you would, there probably is a bit of a stigma, maybe not as much anymore, but around the League of Ireland, that it's even from the, say, League One, League Two, that it's, if you come back from England, it's a step down. But there's been some great examples in the league over the last number of years where players have come back, re-established themselves, got a bit of confidence, and you went on to progress even further.
Yeah.
In England,
it's facilities. That's the main thing. It's the facilities. That's the major difference between ourselves and the English clubs is facilities. You walk around, have clubs even got facilities over in Ireland, but for the ones that have, to try and compare their training grounds and their grounds with, don't get me wrong, there's the odd exception, but as a whole, it's the facilities. So when people come over and they're looking around the place, and it's not the same. It's the facilities wise, we're not, but football wise, on the pitch, as good as anything over there.
Yeah, and I suppose moving on to, you arrived at City then in 2004 under Pat, and I suppose that was probably a bedding in season for yourself. And then 2005, you had a great team, went on to win the league. How was that? How did you find it?
Yeah,
playing well.
I think the thing with us was we all just got on the pitch and off it. We were all.
Yeah, that's something that Joe Gamble has said to me a number of times, that the big thing about that group was that you were all mates, you all kind of socialised together, played golf, you were all friends on and off the pitch.
Yeah,
we all, team?
Because in Cork, you're all within a certain area, so nobody's too far out. So whenever you have a night out, everyone can make it or should make it. Obviously, got the lads who lived a little bit further out, but mainly everyone lived in and around the same area. We all socialised together. We're all the same age. None of us had, at the time, had kids. I think I was the first one to have a child in 2005. But other than that, we all just got on. And because you had a lot of coach journeys, there wasn't mobile phones, there wasn't tablets around. We all had to talk to each other on coach journeys and away trips in Europe. We all had to talk to each other. Games of cards to break the ice and stuff like that. We had that, so it wasn't. It was just a great team spirit. We all got on. Don't get me wrong. We had our disagreements with each other and everything else, but as a whole, we all got on. And I think that even now, when most of us still see each other in Cork or around the place, we'll just get on like we did then.
Yeah, and when I was playing with City, I used to travel in with Joe Gamble, and he used to be telling me about the teams, that you had in 2005, and I used to ask him about, the difference between even Pat Dolan and Rico, and Pat seemed very kind of intense, and everything was micromanaged, I suppose, and then Rico was probably a bit, he was more of a man manager, kind of, maybe kind of not too easy, but Gamble said you enjoyed yourselves under Rico, but in a good way, bode well for the team.
Yeah, I think the thing with Pat was Pat Dolan was the club. I know Brian Lennox was the chairman, but Pat Dolan was the club. When you spoke of Cork City, you spoke about Pat Dolan. He was the one out there. He was the larger than life character. He was the one going out selling the club, and everyone saw that. And we were players that played for him, and he controlled everything more or less. When Rico came in, he was the manager of the team. He was still out there. Don't get me wrong. He wasn't hiding away from people, but he was the manager of the team, and that was the most important thing to him. Was not what you did every other day or what you did afterwards. It was what you did on the Friday night. That was the most important thing, and I think that was the main difference between the two. And how you trained under Rico was just give 100% every time you trained, and you didn't let people take liberties with you in a match, and that's how he did it, and maybe that's what we needed at the time.
Yeah, I suppose keeping it simple with such a good team that you had maybe was the best approach to it. You had a phenomenal team if you think back of it. Mick, Muzz, Benno, Hoggy, Murph, Gamble, Georgie, Roy, Doyle was there, yourself, Woodsy, phenomenal team.
Yeah, John O'Flynn, Dennis Bean. It was and some good young players coming through as well. So yeah, it was a good team. I don't know if it was keeping it simple. I wouldn't be disrespectful to Rico like that. I don't think it was simple. Sometimes that's difficult, taking a step back and letting the boys go on with it is difficult. But it was he certainly knew what he wanted, and he got his message across. And if he did what he wanted, that was fine. If you stepped out of line, he'd come on you like a ton of bricks. But most of us just, like I say, enjoyed playing football, enjoyed playing for the club, enjoyed each other's company. So it was, it was not easy, but it was just an enjoyable time.
Yeah, it makes it much easier when you have a team like that anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I know I spoke to you this recently, and obviously we have the Patreon scheme going at the moment, which shows the older matches. And I know we've chatted on this, and I brought it up with you that football, just like watching the games from 2005, 6, 7, football just seemed like a completely different game back then. You know, I mentioned to yourself there was like looking at the games, and you know the Derry game with yourself that you won the league, the Drogheda 2007 Tanto Cup final. You know, it seemed like a completely different game back then. Like, you know, even tactics wise, how the game was played. You know, you never see the full-backs dropping off, getting the ball, or the keeper doing it short to the centre-backs. You know, it's difficult to say that it was Route 1 football, or it was, you know, like get the ball up the pitch, but there was more emphasis to play in the opposition's kind of half or final thirds. And, you know, get the ball up there and play from there on the breaks and stuff like that, rather than, you know, full backs, centre back playing it through this. There was no such thing as a 6. You just had 2 in midfield, and they were up and down. Like, you know, there was no 6, 8, and 10s, which is obviously prominent in today's game.
Yeah, I suppose football has evolved really. I watched our game. I found an old DVD of our game against Apollon at home. And I felt that as well. I felt that we were very direct. And at the time, I wouldn't have thought it. I would have thought we were probably, but maybe that was a game in Europe where they were sitting off us a little bit, and we just, like you say, sometimes the best option is to get the ball forward to your better players. You're one of the better word, but your more attacking players, and let them do the damage. But yeah, I felt that I was right. I was watching it, and I said it to you earlier. I was like, "Oh, we just, we hit it long a lot," and I never thought that when I was watching it or when I was playing in it.
It really struck me looking back on the Derry game, and I know that was a high intense game with the league, and sometimes kind of final games like that, and cup finals, they can be very cagey. No one wants to give anything away, and so on and so forth. But like, I suppose Stephen Kenny was the manager of Derry at the time, and you know, he obviously had a wonderful footballing team, but both sides, it was literally if the keeper came back, he didn't even take a touch. It was bang up the pitch and play from there. You know, there was no splitting the fullbacks or centre backs or anything like that. It was just, you know, no midfielders dropping in and getting. It was kind of everything was played on the front foot really in the opposition half. Fullbacks clipping balls at the corners and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean that's, at the time that's what won you trophies, and that's what won you championships. So that's what was required. I think now the game has changed, and I think there's a lot more analysis now. So people are more critical. There's a lot more exposure to foreign football, and there's a lot more exposure to Premier League with foreign managers. The game is changing, like you say, and we would have found it when we played matches in Europe. We worked. I remember myself and Kevin Doyle. We were just coming off the pitch. We won, I think, the game. I think it was away to Djurgården, or one of those, or one of the Swedish teams, where we'd never worked so hard as a front two, chasing, because they always had options in midfield, and you'd have Joe Gamble behind us screaming at us like, "You're marking," and there's always an extra player popping up from somewhere. Which I think that back in those days, we won the matches by having good players and good determination and working hard. We certainly never would have outplayed any of those teams, but I felt that in nowadays there's a lot more scrutiny on it. There's a lot more information of different formations and a lot more analysis. And I think fans are more, supporters are more educated on what they want and what they see, and being exposed to the Premier League and Spanish football and everything else has obviously added to that.
Look, very good. Thanks for giving us a great insight into your I suppose your last spell at the club. We'll move on to some questions from the fans that have come in over the last couple of days. So Dermot DC on Instagram has said, do you think the break is a good or a bad thing at the moment, after the start of the season that you had? Do you think the break maybe could have come in at the right time, or do you think that you were kind of ready to kick on and progress after the difficult start?
That's a tough one. I think that for me it was frustrating because I felt we were getting better. So it come at the wrong time. But then you're looking, and I'm thinking, if we're resuming the league and we're starting from where we left off, 5 games played, is it a good opportunity now for us to add a couple of players of what, let's give us a good time to look back, watch all the matches, analyse all the matches, analyse the opposition, and is it a good time for us to add a couple of players? So it's a tough one. I think that, in reflection, I think probably we were getting better, and I would have just liked to continue the league on and seen where this young group of players would have taken us.
Yeah, and look, the next question is from Michael Moria on Facebook, and he says, if the season was to restart, would you do anything, anything different to what you've done kind of in the lead up to the season or at the beginning of the season? I know hindsight's a great thing, but
yeah, it's tough knowing with the way it was. There's not a lot more different we could have done. We would like to have had, whatever. We'd like to have been able to do things different. But the way it was, we were. I think we did as good as we can. I would have liked to maybe get a few more pre-season games in for any level. But again, that was tough with the pitches and everything else. And no, I felt there's not really much more anything I would change really.
Just the final question then from Teresa Jones, who emailed us. What was your favourite game at Turner's Cross as both a player and as a manager?
So as a player, I think it was my first game. We played Dublin City at home back in 2004, and I scored. I think Georgie scored. I think John O'Flynn scored, just off my memory, and I felt that was the reception I got, and the fans there was exceptional. And then my favourite one as a manager so far is the Finn Harps game. It was the time when we were against, the pressure was on us. The weather was terrible. The pitch in the goalmouth wasn't the best. Obviously, Liam Bussin gets stretchered off, but the reception we got, especially in the second half, the way we played in the second half, the chances, the reaction from the crowd and the fans was exceptional. So yeah, that's my favourite one so far.
Good stuff. Look, Neale, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today and give us an update on all things Cork City inside the camp. And obviously uncertain times ahead, but best of luck with the next couple of months, and hopefully we'll be back on the pitch as soon as possible.
It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to getting back out there and seeing everyone again, and hopefully it's not too long.
Great stuff. So that concludes today's first ever City Talk podcast. We are hoping to have a new episode out next Wednesday with another guest. We'd like the fans to get in touch, let us know topics you want us to cover, guests you'd like to see on, different formats you maybe would like to see the podcast go. All feedback is very welcome. You can listen to the podcast on all our social media channels, our YouTube channel, and also on iTunes and Android. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back soon. Thank you.